Hi, Kendra. I'd be happy to answer your questions. So, question number one, do I think technology is important? Absolutely. I've always been a risk taker in my career with technology, and I've seen through the years how technology has allowed me to enhance and improve all the fundamental principles that I learned when I was first teaching. Technology, I think, improves my student engagement, so there's less problems with discipline. Technology has improved and enhanced my ability to infuse inquiry. Technology helps me to break up and differentiate how I deliver a lesson. Technology has also just been fantastic to produce more meaningful content through video and PowerPoints. So I'm a firm believer in the integration of technology to help improve what we already know about teaching and learning. Number two, did I receive any formal training in regards to using technology? No, not really. In fact, not at all. I am pretty good at just learning it on my own, and I take big risks to try it out in my classroom. Now, I've been lucky because when I first started teaching, technology really wasn't available to me, and so I was able to develop a strong foundation for things like how do you ensure that students are engaged without technology? How do I assess without technology? How do I help kids problem solve and inquire without technology? Because when I was in my first 5 years of teaching, there really wasn't much available for me at that time. And so I had sort of a foundation that allowed me then to start to play with infusing or adding technology to these principles. Question three, what do I use for technological programs? Most of them are web-based. I use Google Docs as a place to post a lot of my assessments. So I'll write on my rubrics and then I'll post them in Google Docs and then send that link to students so they have a copy of um, of their rubric without losing it. I use Blogger as a portfolio site, so students will create their portfolios through a blogging program called Blogger. I have used many course management systems, Blackboard. I've used Moodle as a course management system before. You saw the program Socrative. I've used that often just as a way of formatively assessing students before a quiz or a big test. I use Google Earth a lot in some of my science classes where they have to fly in to a Google Earth site, and I'll ask them some questions as they're sort of doing that. For example, there's lots of volcano sites that I use Google Earth for. I have an environmental unit where the students have to evaluate certain cities, so they use Google Earth and then Street View, and they have to walk down cities to see how much garbage they see. I use a program called Explore Learning, which is the website is explorelearning.com, and it's for math and science, and it has these inquiry gizmos. I use BrainPop a lot. I use Windows Movie Maker and iMovie. Question four, how do I go about teaching students about technology? How do I go about that? I've always been a firm believer that I give them a framework. Usually it's a handout that offers sort of the basics on how to do it, and I'll explain those bare bone basics. And then I let the students go after that. In other words, once they know sort of the easiest and simplest way to do something without any frills or bells and whistles, once they've engaged in the learning component of the project, I let them explore. So, the simplest example I can give you, if they're making a presentation with PowerPoint, I'm not going to teach them how to do slide animations or add music or anything like that. I simply just would show them, 5 or 6 years ago, I'd show them how to make basic PowerPoint slides. And then if they want to add some bells and whistles, then that's fine. Same with if we're making a movie, I'll show them the basics on how to make a movie, get it into iMovie or get it into Windows Movie Maker. And if they want to add music or text or anything like that, then I give them that option, and I can circulate, and often kids will figure it out on their own after that. What are my favorite go-to programs for technology? ExploreLearning.com for sure, because students can inquire and they can learn on their own in a very hands-on, simulating way at that site. And so it's a great site because students can work on that at home, or if I'm away and I have a substitute teacher in, it's a great backup for the substitute who may not know a lot about science. Blogger for student e-portfolios is my go-to. Every year I allow students to reflect on their work through Blogger. BrainPop.com has been a go-to for me for many years. It has a neat way of explaining science concepts. And then I've always had a course management system. To me, it doesn't really matter which one. Right now it's Blackboard, but it was Moodle before that, and then Desire to Learn before that. And so it's great to have a course management system. I use it for formative assessment. I use it to post assignments, to organize kids through a calendar. So those are my top four. I know you said five, but I guess those are my top four. Number 6, what are student favorites? This is interesting because when I talk to my students, even though they love most of the classes and so on and so forth, student technology favorites, I think it's because they're doing it on their own, but most students that I teach, Tumblr is a favorite of theirs. Instagram, which I don't use at the school. Instagram I would use, but there are some sort of freedom of information guidelines that we haven't broken through sort of the barrier at our school when it comes to using Twitter or Instagram. And so I've left that alone so far. It's something in the back of my head that I'd like to, just because I think if the kids are using it already, why not try and integrate it into the classroom? So those are sort of 2 student favorites, which, as I said before, interesting enough, it's not something that we use at our school. Has technology improved my classroom teaching and experience? Absolutely. This is without question. And how has it improved? It has made how things are done so much better. Either more efficient. So how do I assess kids to know that they understand the material? Technology has helped me streamline the formative assessment process so that in the case of a course management system, they can try a bunch of practice questions, and I can go in there and I can look at the data to see who's struggling on what question, and I can review that question before we write the summative assessment. Plus, if you're staying on top of the latest and newest technology, we call this the Hawthorne effect. when students use it for the first few times, they're interested and engaged, and some programs offer long-term interest and engagement, but for the most part, students are engaged because this is what they do now. That's their kid culture, and so we need to meet students in their culture, which nowadays is sort of a technology-based culture. Number 8, what is most memorable, or one of my memorable experiences using technology? Believe it or not, it happened just recently, so I'm not sure if you saw, but I came up with the idea of using RSA Animate style videos with my students. And so I started doing this about a month ago, and it's been an amazing experience for me. I first started out where I tried it on my own, and then I tried it with my students, and a number of teachers at the school were interested and hadn't they've seen the real ones, but they hadn't sort of thought, oh, I wonder if I could do that with my kids. So a lot of our teachers at school are now using it, and I'm also going to be presenting on it in New Orleans. And so this sort of concept that I didn't come up with by any means, and in fact I saw another teacher in the States use it, has for me opened up a bunch of neat sort of avenues for students, for other teachers in my school, and then when I go to present in New Orleans, maybe even other teachers. I just recently saw that you did your final reflection for your Ed Camp using RSA Animate, and so obviously you think it's kind of a neat way to represent information as well. So good for you. Bravo. Number 9, some tips for new teachers using technology. I think in education, technology is always going to keep changing, and how do you stay on top of all these new strategies? Like Dean Sharesky and yourself, I've found Twitter to be the most effective professional development for me to stay on top of new things that are coming out in technology. I may not have the time to try and learn everything, but at least if I follow the right people and if I follow the right hashtags on Twitter, I get a quick snapshot of some of the different things that teachers around the world are using, and I can archive that, bookmark it, and then if I have time in my busy days, I can always then delve into it. So, my biggest sort of tip, which you've already sort of stumbled across, is Twitter is it's like speed dating for teacher professional development. It's awesome. It's efficient. You don't have to necessarily spend hours of time that might be wasted. You just quickly scan things to see if you're interested. And number 10, what kind of tips could I give you or other teachers in regards to first beginning teachers when it comes to implementing technology, or beginning teachers in general? I alluded to this at the start of the video. My career had sort of a beginning foundation, and I think sometimes teachers make the mistake of implementing the technology without understanding the fundamental concepts of what makes a good teacher. So technology won't work for a teacher if they're not already have a strong handle on discipline and student engagement. If you're cautious and you don't have the class working with you, if you start to try to use technology, it's going to be difficult, because technology isn't the magic bullet. Same with assessment. If you haven't already understood assessment philosophy and been able to implement it, then adding assessment with technology might be frustrating. or student inquiry. If you haven't practiced using student inquiry, then student inquiry with technology could send you down a path of misunderstanding. So have your long-term fundamental principles of how to run your classroom, like routines, how to assess, etc. Have those in place and be confident about those, and so that the technology part, when it is added, doesn't throw you off. So it's been great working with you, Kendra, and I wish you an amazing, wonderful career. I know mine has been, and so please feel free to stay in touch. You have my email, and if you have any questions or want to continue the learning, I'm happy to help out. Bye for now.